Hi, everybody. Welcome back to A Time for Art. It's Wednesday, so it's my favorite day. It is paint day. We're very excited. Welcome here. My name's Hershey. I'm your host. Let's say hello to our talented and lovely artist, Allison.
Hi, Hershey. Hi,
Hi.
everybody.
How's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm awesome. Awesome. Thank you for meeting with us again on another Wednesday paint day. Today is paint number 3 of our Cycles of Transition series that we're doing all of November and December. We've got a really fun painting today, inspired by a painting that you've already done called Stay Wild Moonchild. Tell us a little bit about it.
Yes. So this one is let's look a little bit about that. So I did this one live, and what I really liked about this were some of the deep violets and tonal violets, and then I've got the moon and the sun and this really impressionistic technique I did in here. And
Very cool.
From all of that, I went ahead and put this together. And like Hershey said, it's the third one of our paintings in this month series. And so just to review, we did the transition geese, where the sky transitioned and the geese transitioned.
Yeah.
And also did the Demeter, goddess of the harvest,
Yep.
with all these different colors and symbols and
lots of movement in that one.
Yes. And we were in November, and we were talking about how we were going from fall, autumn to winter. So all of that. And now we're going to go ahead and do this one kind of in the day and night transition motif.
Very exciting. I love about this one. Today we're going to learn a lot about layering of paints, some like really cool acrylic techniques, some color blending, which is going to be like, that's just the most interesting for me. What else is coming up for us in this painting today?
Sure. So what I like about this one is that it embraces kind of an impressionistic technique, which is we're going to spend a lot of time on this background. It's kind of the whole thing is this moody background that we're going to work with. Yeah. We also have some really stylized elements. These are very simple symbols that we have with the sun and the moon. And then we're also going to be embracing contrast, and we're kind of make some of these elements pop very specifically. And then we're also really working with the complementary colors, violet and yellow. They are opposite on the color wheel. We've got some blue in there too, but those are cool. We're kind of hinging the whole painting on the magic of these complementary colors.
Before we get into the materials needed today, and then you'll start with the instruction. I just wanted anybody at home who is following along and wants to paint along with us, we encourage that. Please do have a really good time. But for time's sake and to keep on task, Allison, you'll see, will have a lot of different swap outs and whatnot. So as you're painting, keep going. We're going to move on a little bit faster than you, but please keep going, have a good time. And then as soon as this live stream is over, the video will be the step-by-step video will be available on our Facebook page, A Time for Art subscriptions. And I think that's where that's it. Yeah. And YouTube. That's right. And YouTube.
Immediately after. So there's that. Yes.
Awesome.
Absolutely. All right. So take you through the materials that we need. So you're going to need one of your blank canvas panels. So I'm going to move this guy for the time being. And then you're going to need these 3 colors. These are the only ones we're using, and white. And just to go through it, that's cobalt blue, lemon yellow, and violet. I'm going to go ahead. We have these other palettes that we're using, so I'm going to go ahead and demo this one out today.
Okay, cool. You know what? I actually moved to paper plates. I know it's not, but
awesome. Yeah.
But washing that palette or that, it's time consuming.
There's some labor to it. And so she's going to try the paper plates. You get a new palette every month. We'll see what you like. Obviously, use anything. I have pretty much quite a bit of this painting is with your big brush, which is so fun to work with a big brush. So we're going to use that. And then really, I just used the smaller one after that. And then this is the vellum template that we're going to use today. It's the sun and moon. And then it's your Time for Art pencil and your dark transfer paper and your water. Always need water.
Excellent. Look at my fancy water. It says time for art. I don't know if
Fantastic.
you-
Yes, and those are available for sale on our website
Yes.
as well. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and set up here. I'm going to put our blank canvas panel on this side.
Allison, was that the medium yellow or the lemon yellow?
But it's whatever, it's the yellow that you have available.
You got it. Okay.
Definitely. And then I'm going to have our palette out. I'm gonna put this on this side. We're working a little bit differently today because it's a vertical composition. So it's just a little bit different.
That's right. That's right. We're going to do,
Yeah, it's the camera's in a little bit of a different place, which is uneventful, but took a little bit of tweaking. All right. So the colors we're going to start off with out of the tube are your yellow. Any yellow you have will work. I drop some yellow in this well as well. The next one I'm going to do is your violet. And then it's going to be your cobalt blue. The reason I did it that way is we don't need much violet in our yellow. So I'm going to take a touch, a dab of your violet into.
oh, look at that. A little dab will do ya.
Really? Yeah, little dab will do ya. Powerful stuff. And you get this really beautiful kind of gold umber color. Okay. That's
Okay.
that magic. And then I'm going to take this and I'm going to work it back into my yellow.
Okay.
All right. In that order. So now I have this kind of light gold, darker gold,
Yeah.
and blue. And we're just going to take our water, lots and lots of water. All right. And when I say wash, that's just always a very loose kind of watercolor technique where we're just going to wash all of this very loosely, starting with the yellow, right into your pre-primed canvas panel. And the reason I'm calling attention to the fact that the canvas panel is pre-primed is that anything this wet going onto this very juicy, or this very thirsty, anything this juicy going on, it's going to dry up almost
Yeah.
instantly. All right, so I got that going. Then we're going to dig into this. Don't worry too much about getting a really smooth transition because we're going to paint over this actually with white. But go ahead and get to that point.
Yeah, just when you think you know what's happening with this background, you don't.
You don't. No.
You don't.
Okay. So then I'm going to dig into my violet. Get into that with things.
Oh, this is so cool.
Isn't that fun?
Yeah.
I'm actually going to take this all the way down.
I love all the water use. It's like, it's almost like watercolor.
So much water. And you know, you can, without a doubt, do a very nice watercolor style painting with acrylic paint.
Yeah, you can. Look at what we're doing today.
Absolutely. And I'm just going to go back up and kind of work into this transition here, work into this transition here. And then last but not least is my blue. And that's how that looks. All right.
All right.
guess what? You're done with this stage. That's it. Don't think twice about it. Don't worry about it. I'm just kind of playing into this. All right. Yay, we're done.
Yeah, hey, you got a background.
All right. So this can dry. And then I'm going to go ahead. I've got a swap, but keep going to town here.
Yep.
And then this dry looks a lot like that.
Yep.
Darker might be lighter, all good. All right. But a reach for my white. White is a very big star of the show today. And if I didn't mention that in the beginning,
You have.
white, that's why we give you the biggest white. And white is kind of the star.
Yes.
Drop that in one of your wells. And we're going to take your biggest brush, just like this. I'm going to kind of loosen up your white. All right. Wouldn't stay the same as the other one, but you know, just kind of make it loose.
Okay.
And we're going to paint over the whole thing.
I mean, this is the part that I think is just so neat.
Isn't this fun?
Yeah.
And so the whole thing, it's a very thin veil of white. And I'd say it's a very thin coat. I wouldn't quite call it a wash. And I'm going to go, because I don't really want, again, we're going to paint over this again, if you can imagine. I don't want really deliberate streaks. So I'm going to work both ways. I'm going to paint vertically and kind of cover the important thing is to cover the whole thing. Stay.
Very cool. And so you kind of wanted to cover, it's like a very thin veil. You could still see the colors behind it.
Yes.
Is there a lot of water in that white, or is that just not a lot of white?
Water in the white. I broke it up a little bit.
Okay.
So it's a thin veil of white. And then I'm going to go back the opposite way, just with what the paint that's already on the canvas panel. Move it around this way. I just want it to be very even. Just like that. Do it one more time. And when this dries, getting back in frame here, it's going to look something like this.
All right, there it is. You've covered up a lot of your work.
This moody, iridescent, low key paint.
Yeah.
Simple, beautiful. So
it's almost mysterious. You don't know what's lurking underneath there.
You don't know what's working underneath there, but this is our foundation for what we're about to do next. And so all these colors I had mixed before, I'm now going to put a drop of white into, or a dollop. I'm going to use the white I have on the palette first. And then into each one of these. All right. So now I've added, and if you need more, make more. This was yellow with a touch of the violet. This was yellow with more of the violet. You should have plenty. Don't worry about that. And then I'm going to start with this one. And that's the color I want it to be. Move on to this one. And that's the color I want it to be. And then move into this one. Color I want it to be. And move into this one. So
you're just using the same brush.
Same brush. If you go in this direction, it's about the right
Okay.
We are transitioning the same way we're transitioning.
Right. Okay.
All right. And so, because I've got the blue on the brush now. Now you can wash in between and everything else, but that is, the ombre effect started in this direction. That's why this trick works that way, right?
Yep.
So we'll start with my blue, and we're just gonna kind of work in this blue down here like this. And then what peeks through is the blue you already did. Moving up into my violet. These are really kind of high energy, loose, impressionistic, abstract strokes.
And this technique of layering the paint and then white and then more paint, you were telling me earlier that's going to create a lot of depth.
It's going to create a lot of depth. Absolutely. And that's how you get this kind of moody, iridescent quality.
Yeah.
My way up into this kind of in between. And you get this kind of grayed tone because this is where the yellow meets the violet. These are the complements. They're going to cancel each other and make this really, really beautiful gray. And then into my gold.
That looks really, really cool.
I love it, right?
Yeah.
And it's this really moody, exciting day and night sky because we're representing the day and the night. So why choose? So I'm looking at this right now and I kind of want to blend this area a little bit more because I'm getting a little bit of a line.
Okay.
So I'm going to go ahead and just take some water on my brush. I've cleaned it out at this point. And I'm just going to take some water and I'm just going to kind of apply some water on my painting. Your painting might not need this.
I definitely needed it too. I'm so glad you talked about this because I have a line myself.
And just move around the painting that's already there, the paint that's already there. And if you still don't like it, paint, grab some more paint.
Yeah.
And down here, I want a little bit more blue. So I'm going to reach for a little bit more blue. And just fill in around here. Move this around a little bit, same technique. And that's our sky. That's how we get this.
That's really very cool.
Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and move this guy. I've got a swap for a dry one.
Let's see it.
And here's your dry one.
There you go. Hey.
It's a little bit different, and let's kind of talk about that. So this one, I kept a little bit more of the yellow tones, a little bit lower. This one, I brought some of the more purpley gray tones up a little higher. Both good.
Yeah.
Just want to go ahead and show that this is about the movement and the transition, and it's not supposed to be very exact, so that's why we've done it in this fashion. So this is dry. And the next thing we're going to do when this is dry, very important that it's dry, is we're going to take out our vellum template. Mine's a little wet from all the painting we've been doing. And we're going to go ahead and set this up kind of like this so that the moon is kind of looping this way.
Kind of opening up to the sky a little bit.
To this corner, I'd say.
Yeah.
If we went this way, it'd be opening up to the right. We want it kind of opening up to the corner. I do. Please, whichever way you'd like it.
Yeah.
And so I'm just going to go ahead and transfer this first. And the important thing to note is you can put it in there if you'd like, but this circle and these lines in between are kind of irrelevant to this particular painting. You want to put books or something like that, and you want to keep the circle, do, but definitely don't need to in this instance. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to tuck my graphite paper, sticky shiny side down.
Yeah.
And that's twice in our last demo. And I am just doing the outer contour of the sun. And that is, this is the first time you're joining us, taking my pencil, applying pressure to the outside of the vellum transfer. I just hinged onto my very dry canvas panel.
You know, something else I want to point out too is that that's the same transfer paper that you've been using for a month and a half now, because there's so much life in those things.
Absolutely. And you get a little bit of a lighter line. And it's at least the case with mascara. That sometimes when you open a brand new mascara, it's too new.
It's too new.
It's too sticky. It's too, yeah. And you might not like, you might want it after, you know, it's best after a few tries. And so I kind of like to hang on to my old transfer paper.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm not using a new one every time.
Along with all of the materials you see here, they'll come in the kit every single month, but hang on to that transfer paper.
Yeah, it's the good stuff. All right, so because I don't remember what I've done yet, I'm gonna go ahead and take a look and see where I am with things.
Which I'm glad you're pointing out too. That's a good reason to point out why we should hinge it every time.
Always hinge it every time, yep. And I need this side of the moon of the crescent. Let's see here. And then I do want this whole side in. And then I'll show you what's left. Yep, that's what I want. All right. We get the outside contour of the sun and the moon. And I missed this little corner that I think is kind of cool. So I'm just going to draw it in.
What part is that?
This part, it's part of your transfer.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. The NCI.
Negative space. And I'm going to add this one in too that I didn't transfer. But that's why we practice drawing here. Don't worry
about it.
All right. Those are the ones I'm going to add. Perfect. Okay. So back to our paint. I have these little, they can be stars. I've kind of got them sort of going as the wind, but these sort of stylistic little dots that I think have some depth and some texture. And it's another, we've got these symbolic pieces here and we've got these look more rendered. So I want another place where I've got some symbolic pieces, which are these dots. So that's how I used that. So I'm going to use just the same blue I had mixed up before. And I'm just going to go ahead and make some dots in some wavy designs. So I'm going to go up and around like this with the blue.
Just kind of anywhere you feel.
Well, I'm making kind of a swooshy wave that kind of goes this way. So I want to add a little bit of movement to the sky.
Yeah.
And these are just little specks. If you go at the side, you get more of a slanted speck. If you go right on top, you get more of a circle. So if your brush is very upright, you get more of a circle drop. If it's more like this, you get more of a oval.
Yeah.
Both are good, depending on what you want. I'm using both in this instance. And I'm kind of staying out of this area. Well, I just painted into the sun, so I'm not, but it doesn't really, these are going to dry pretty fast. I'm not too worried about it. So you're not going to need them necessarily in the sun when we're going super opaque in the moon. So I've got this kind of going this way. And the other color or tone I'm going to use is white. maybe with a little blue in it, maybe without, but that's going to be the other speckling. And then this one I have kind of going this way. So I'm putting in my drops. This way. This is also, I don't have any more swaps. So this is going to be our final.
All right, cool.
Our final painting. I'll let everybody know that if they're painting, if they're not, if they're watching, this is our last. We're going to finish on this piece. All right, so I've got some specks going that way. And then I'm just gonna put some random ones around too. And these are my dark ones. I'm gonna go for some light ones too. So I'm just gonna go back to the white I had initially, and I've got some blue in there. So this is just going to be a very light white, or a white with a little bit of blue. So very light blue.
Okay.
I'm just gonna drop in some light specks. Just like this.
I love these paintings where everything's not so regimented, like must do this and must do that. There's so much creative and personal touches in the paintings that we've done.
This is all about creative license.
Yep.
We want to enjoy the room, sort of, to do from the original. Maybe you make some stars different shapes. Maybe you put in a more symbolic looking star. That would be really cool. I didn't. That doesn't mean that's not what your painting should look like or could look like. Or so I put in some big ones. Another big one right here. Some overlapping. Sometimes you want some close together and far away so they don't look so regimented, I guess, or manufactured. All right, so I'm just going to review a little bit.
I love that.
We started with a blank canvas panel, and then we washed in, starting from the top, a yellow that had some violet in it. So it was kind of a tint, or not a tint, it was a desaturated version of itself. We went to a yellow with a lot of violet in it, and that's this kind of gold gray color we have in here. We blended that again with even more violet, which is this area right here. And then at the bottom, we went the violet into the blue. And that's this ombre technique that's coming all the way down. Then we waited for that to dry with a lot of water. And then we waited for that to dry, and we put white over the whole thing. And that was our base tone, that ombre technique, to then go over with all of those colors plus white applied on top. And that's how we have our base tone right here. We let that dry. We actually didn't, I had one ready. And make sure you let that one dry. And then we went and did some of this kind of wind speckle star technique that is kind of stylized and kind of geometric in a way, and is going to work with these other symbols we're going to be putting in. And I'm about ready to show you how to put in that base tone now.
Yeah, the background is so cool. It's really the star right now for me in this painting.
I think it's a star all the way through. I don't think it's going to be a producing painting without this background that we put so much love into. So up until now, everything we've done has some white in it. I guess actually the wash layer didn't, but then we put a whole layer of white on top of that.
Yeah.
What we're going to do here first with our symbols, with our sun and our moon, is mix up a dark tone for behind the sun and use the paint right out of the tube for our moon. And so I'm going to do that without any white added, because the way we get this to really pop is to put that in, let it dry, and then paint on top of it from there. So I don't want to add any water to that because I don't want to make it any more liquidy for that. Okay, I want it to be flat and be even, and I want to have enough of that paint so that I can cover the whole thing in one coat and let it dry. And then we're going to work on our clouds. Then we're going to go back to it with this opaque layer after that. So,
Okay.
all right. And we know the trick with yellow. The yellow is kind of a gel. So here's a big thing of yellow. Here's a not so big drop of violet. And to get a 50-50 combination, because not all paint is created equal, it takes that.
Yeah.
And then in this well over here, I'm just going to drop a little bit of violet. And I'm going to mix the sun first because it's behind the moon. So here we go. And here is our, look at how dark, even with those proportions. This is going to be our base tone. This really rich brown for our sun.
You know, did you happen to catch the partial eclipse that happened a few weeks back?
No, I wish I had.
I did.
Tell us about it.
It was, I think it was like around 2 a.m. I set my alarm and I looked out, and sure enough, like it happened so fast when these things happen because the earth is spinning and everything's moving, but it was so cool. And December, actually, this month is one of the most active celestial months that we'll see in our lifetimes, because there's a meteor shower that just happened that I can't believe I missed, but I think I did, or maybe it's happening very soon. I'll check that out. And then there was an eclipse, and there was something else, and I've already forgotten it.
Wow, that's awesome. Okay, so just to talk a little bit about what I'm doing right now. I am, as evenly as possible, filling in my sun with this brown we just mixed up. And working at it from the
This brown will eventually be light.
Yes, that we're going to go super, super light on top of. But then I'm just going to take my time a little bit more on our sunbeams that spiral. And the idea being, some of this is going to poke through. If you look very closely on here, I'll hold it up.
Yeah. So the brown,
a little bit, and that's cool. That's intended.
That's very cool.
And that's kind of what makes it pop. I'm going to paint in here.
So when you take the white later on, the goal is not to cover the brown all the way.
To get an opaque layer of white where it is the most dense. So where it's very dense, there's no brown that shows through, but kind of along the edges and getting to that point, you're going to catch some brown.
So cool.
And that's why we're setting it up this way. And if you get a little bit of brown into your moon, don't worry about it, because the violet will overpower it and cover it right up. So I'm not worrying about it. I'm going ahead and brushing right into the moon. And I want this as even as possible because I want it to dry quickly. So I'm going to go over it again and kind of move around what I have, and we'll do it a few times. Onto these beams over here.
Such a cool technique. You can use it for so many different, themes.
Oh, yeah. All of these techniques that we're using right now, which to me, the real emphasis here is just different ways you can apply acrylic paint.
Yeah.
You're going to use over and over and over again. And you can always find a new exciting way to do it.
Which is another reason why the art journals are so important, because in your, when you're not doing one of these paintings with us on Wednesday, we go over these on Mondays as well, but you can just go through, try out some of these techniques that Allison is showing us. Like this, this is just some stuff that I did in my journal just to try out stuff that she's teaching us on a weekly basis.
It's amazing. Yeah. It's the kind of thing where your art journal is just a place to use up your extra paint, get out your paint. If you want to play with your transfers, if you want to work on something themed, it's the safe space to do that.
Yeah.
If you don't like it, rip it out.
Yeah, who cares?
So I'm just moving around. Now I've covered my whole sun, and it's a medium brown that I absolutely love. And right here, I got a little of the brown out of my sun, and I'm just going to make another beam.
Oh, nice.
Coming out of it.
That's that. Yeah.
I wasn't there. I like it though.
No such thing as a mistake.
No such thing as a mistake, only happy accidents. Some other guy who did painting demonstrations.
Yeah. Yeah.
On the painting, said something like that once.
Yeah.
And so I'm just kind of evening out what I have. And in doing so, kind of drying it out, because I'm moving the kind of ridges that are going to take the longest to dry. And I want this really flat because I'm going to paint over it. And so in evening it out, it's also drying it out. I'm only working with the paint that's already on there. I'm flattening out these kind of very wet ridges that are standing up.
Okie dokie.
It's drying it out. Okay, that looks good. I'm gonna flatten it out some more. As soon as I say something's done, I go right back in.
Yeah.
Hold on.
You're having fun.
And as long as I own it, I think that's all right. Now I'm going to do the same thing with the violet, straight up violet from out of the tube. Look at how dark and rich that is. It's a very richly pigmented paint that we have. And our yellows just aren't. That doesn't mean we can't use them. It doesn't mean they aren't great. It's just not all paint was created equal.
Yeah, some of that stuff needs a lot of white.
Yeah, and not much I can do about it. Coming around this way. Remember, I say it every time and I can't say it enough. It is always easier to pull a line than it is to push a line. So I'm going to pull this line on the edge of my moon. And then sometimes you just have to like move it around. So I'm going to go ahead and work my way from the corner out this way, pull a line this way, pull a line this way. You need enough paint on your brush to get a really smooth line on the edge, which is what happens when you're pulling it. Getting a really clean edge. Around this way. And I'm going to take a little bit more paint. Little dab, drop it in there. Same technique from this crescent. I'm going to pull a line this way. And pull a line this way. And this is right from the tube. I didn't dilute it any. I didn't add any water to it. I didn't add any white to it. And the reason for that is I want it to dry and be very dark to paint on top of. All right, so I've got nice clean lines on both sides of my moon. I'm gonna do the same thing where I kind of dry out some of the ridges that are standing up. So I'm going to kind of push those down, move some paint around. I'm going to leave that to dry. Before we paint our clouds. Okay, so just to review, we did our whole background technique. We've been through that. Then we added our sort of stars in the wind, speckles, anything
Yes.
you like to call them, just like that. Then we had already transferred our sun and moon, and we didn't do any of the internal lines on that. So we have just the sun shape, just the moon shape, and we mixed up this brown right here that is in pigment half yellow, half violet. In actuality, whole lot of yellow.
Yeah.
But the pigments, because that's the way the world works, are equally represented in here, half and half. To get that tone, we filled in our moon.
There's a phrase that you use a lot, Allison, when you say that not all paints are created equal, and that's what you're talking about, right? Like,
yes, that is the one. That is the whole thing right here. And you just have to accept that kind of.
yeah.
And then we filled in our moon. So that was for the sun. And then we filled in our moon with this really deep, right out of the tube violet. So I'm going to go ahead and actually just flatten some more wet areas I see now. Acrylic paint dries very fast, even though it's not fast enough for our liking. And so as it dries, I want this really flat and even, and some areas become more available to be seen as it dries. Okay, so I went ahead and took care of that. Then, now, opaque white. I say it every week. We looked very hard for very white to mix with our colors. And this is the heavy body, opaque, covering white. And it's a great choice to make our clouds with. So I've got a cloud that kind of starts up here, kind of comes down here. So this occupies kind of more than half of the space this way. Then I have this other kind of cloud that sort of starts as a sliver and works its way over. And then I've got this little corner cloud right here. So those are the three clouds I'm going to make. I'm going to make it just with my white. So I'm going to add white to one of the wells in my palette. Just like that. I'm going to take my biggest brush. Make sure it's wet, but not too wet.
I love using the big brush.
It's so much fun. I am going to dip it into my white, and I'm just going to kind of make this sort of uneven edge with the white to get started up even higher than that with my cloud.
Okay.
And I'm actually going to leave it just like that.
And you just kind of putting them wherever, like wherever your heart takes.
So this one I want to definitely start up about this high and go past the middle of the painting. That's the only, and do this really uneven edge, just like this. And I'm going to let this paint sort of adhere and start drying. And then I'm going to go in this way before I kind of loosen up this edge with the water that's already there.
Okay.
So make this cloud over here, and I'm going to start this up about not quite as high as the other one, and make this uneven edge like this.
Yeah.
Just like that. Then I'm going to go back to this one, our first one, put some water on my brush, just water, and I'm just going to kind of massage some water into this edge. not take it all the way over, not take it all the way to the edge, but just kind of work it into that painted edge. And I'm gonna leave it alone. I'm gonna do the same technique over here. I still had some water on my brush. If you need some more, reach for it. And just kind of move the paint that was there. In this instance, over to the left. In this instance, it was over to the right. Now that I've done that on both sides, this cloud that's closest to us in the foreground, same technique. Over here. Like that. A little bit of water and let it dry for kind of a hot minute.
Yeah, that looks really cool.
Not dry, but sort of adhere. It's going to start bonding and you want to let that help you. And then I'm just going to kind of move this into there. Now we're going to kind of let this go for a minute because we're going to go back and highlight it with the same technique when this dries a little bit more. Acrylic paint always dries both darker and more translucent. It's going to be streakier. We know that about it. We're not going to get mad at it for doing that. It does that. That wouldn't be nice. So it does that, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, no big deal. We're going to go back over here. This is pretty dry enough to do what's next. All right.
Okay.
So we are going to mix. I'm going to go ahead and use the white that's on my palette. Primarily yellow into the white and a touch, a smidge of this brown, just so that it kind of works with our painting.
Okay.
We're just going to kind of dirty it up a little bit.
I like this.
Just, you know, it's like a little, it's like a little Dijon.
Yeah. A little spice. Yeah.
Like it's just, it makes it a little bit, if we have this tonal, subtle painting, we don't want to add neon yellow to it, but it's definitely a very light yellow, really beautiful, buttery yellow, right?
Yes.
And I'm going to go ahead and just start painting our sun. Right.
Okay. And now you're noticing that the brown isn't bleeding through at all, right?
I mean, it's catching it a little bit because we're going to do this probably twice.
Okay.
But it's not mixing with it.
Right.
Is it bleeding through? Sure, a little bit. And some of that, especially on the edges, I'm leaving a little bit around the edge because I want that little bit of a perimeter to help it pop.
Right. You want to show just a little bit of the outside. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't want it to be too clean because
that's not who we are.
Not who we are. This is a painterly painting. We don't want it to look like someone printed a sun and moon on top.
Right.
You want to do that, there's only 100 ways to. You can get a Cricut. You can put it on there. You can send it somewhere to be embossed or something.
You said there's only 100 ways?
Only 100 ways to get a very manufactured looking sun onto the top of this really beautiful, painterly, subtle, mysterious sky we've made. Why would we want to sell out and overdo? So I didn't like that stroke, so I just took my finger and moved it.
Nice. If anyone's following along at home.
The smudge.
Yeah.
The technique is called smudging.
It's exactly how you do that.
Yeah. And so I'm just kind of very carefully going into my sunbeams. Sometimes you need to take a minute and kind of not just clean off your brush, but just get a really nice kind of roll the fibers.
Yeah, make a nice point.
Like make a nice point for yourself, and it's worth it. I'll move this a little closer to me. with these.
You know, I do that too when I have too much paint on my brush.
Yeah, you get into it and you get carried away, and that's the goal. Lose yourself in the paint. Sometimes you gotta be like, no, this brush is here to help me, and it's small and it can be very small. And you just have to sort of make yourself a nice fine tip. Working around this way. And in this instance, the sun sits behind the moon. So that's why we're going to do the sun first, because the moon's going to overlap on top. So we're going to let the order of operations help us here. I'm working in this yellow into these bottom ones down here. Again, always pull, don't push, don't stab. Every so often you catch yourself doing it and you're like, why work against the current?
Why am I doing this?
Yeah.
Allison tells me every week.
Here's the thing. I do it. I have to tell I say it every week because I need to hear it every week.
You know, something that I've been doing is just like really flipping my paint around, you know, as I need to get a certain edge or whatnot, I'll need to flip my paint all the way around. And I thought about you the other day, like, you know, I've seen some of your enormous paintings and I've been like, how does she get, like, I mean, I'd have to be like upside down on a ladder.
You just move things around.
Yeah.
That's what you do. All right. So I'm still working here on painting in my sun. This way. So this painting also, I took a little bit of art history.
Okay.
Enough to get an art degree, enough to get a BFA.
Nice.
And I always mess this up. Which century it would have been. But it's, you know how like you're off, like we're in the 21st.
Yeah, it's always off one.
It's always off one. And this
so I think we're in the 21st century, even though it's the 2000s.
See, and so I'm not even going to try, but this was, we studied the neoclassical. So if classics were the Greeks, the neoclassical era was the new classics, was kind of the discovery of the Greeks. And they played with the idea of the sublime. And the sublime was the heavens. What did the heavens look like? What was beyond what we understood to be and the earth? And you get some really beautiful, mystical, exciting skies at the idea of painting the heavens. And so this reminds me a little bit what the neoclassical masters painted as the sublime.
Do you have an example of a neoclassical master?
And I knew you were going to say that, and I'll have one for you next week. All right, so we got some yellow left. I'm going to go ahead and use it up now that I've kind of got all of my beams in here. And like I said, I didn't take a lot of art history, and I took even less regular history because art history counted as history, and you can give people 2 credits.
Yeah.
One that way. And so I did naturally to graduate on time. And so I'll get you.
You know what always confused me? It was like, what postmodernism? It's like, well, then there's modern, and it's like, well, what's postmodern? If you know what I mean? Modern feels cutting edge.
I can give you an answer if you're interested.
I am.
So technically, everything we're doing right now is the postmodern. Okay.
That's what I would assume.
And it's because art does not equate the modern era with contemporary art. Okay. So modern art is often thrown around to say it's the art we're making right now. And that's not really true. Modern art is art of the modernist era, which is kind of like the 50s and 60s was the modernist era. Okay.
Okay.
Before goes a little after. All right. So anything made after the modern era is the post-modern. All right.
Okay.
All even what we're doing right now, which we could, modern art, we mean contemporary art. We don't necessarily, we don't mean art of the modern era. And that's kind of, it's a little tricky, but that is the point.
Contemporary means
Contemporary
new and
means current.
current. Yeah.
Modern art is referencing the modern era. And all of it, since the present is always going to be past the 50s and 60s, is postmodern. So,
okie dokie.
get my white back out while this kind of our buttery yellow dries.
Okay.
Up some white, kind of in the middle here, because we're probably going to use it again. And I moistened my brush, and I'm going to go in and highlight the edge of these clouds. We're probably going to do it again as this dries one more time. But I'm just hitting these edges.
Just the edges.
And we'll kind of work our way out from there. But kind of the same thing. We're going to put it on there, let the paint adhere to canvas panel. I'm going to kind of dry it out to do this. And then I'm just going to kind of blur.
Do that same technique as before.
Yeah. Before I use some water, I've got plenty of water on there. So I'm just going to kind of feather with a light touch paint that's already on there out. And I don't want to make this too opaque because I want to see the beautiful sky through it. All right. We're going to do a second coat on the sun, but I want to make sure this dries first. So we're going to mix up our lavender for our moon. So I have a little bit of violet still in my palette, so I'm just going to add some white to that. If you don't, reach for more. You got more. Don't worry about it.
And purple is a color that, you know, they're not created equally. Purple is one of those colors. The violet is one of those colors where you don't need too much, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, little dabble Gia.
Yep.
It is a highly pigmented paint out of the two. All right. And I added a touch of the brown mixture, you know.
Right.
Like there's in a cocktail.
Yeah.
Sweetness just enough.
Yeah.
Just a layer of it. All right. And then I'm going to start in the middle because I want my edges to show. And if you end up covering the whole thing, you can add a little bit of violet back to your edges if you need them. But right now we're just going to leave it and see what we get. I'm just going to paint in my moon. Just like that.
With a nice lavender.
With a nice lavender. And it's really popping because we're painting it on top of our deep, rich, dry.
Dry.
And let's say you don't wait till it's dry because you didn't. And there's plenty of times I just haven't because I was in whatever reason. It doesn't wreck it, right? It'll be a perfectly nice moon. It's just not going to pop like this is. So if you don't want it to pop, let's say you want it to be subtle. Let's say no problem. It's just this is the technique that's going to make it really come at you. And that's kind of the magic of painting. All of these techniques can help us make art, which isn't photography, it's not realistic representation. It's that with some ideas and some creativity and a little technique and knowledge of what you're working with, you can kind of do magic. And to me, that's where it's something going from something strictly representational or just a copy of something where it becomes fine art. And I'm always trying to revisit and reinvent and experiment and get to that place with my work. So in this case, it's making the sun and moon pop that I think is kind of the magic that brings this
Yeah.
together.
It eliminates the need to like outline.
Yeah, and you get this really beautiful kind of organic edge. Just like that. And actually with the moon, because I like exactly how that edge looks, I'm just going to take a little bit of white and I'm just going to kind of massage that right into the lavender I just put down to get a little bit of this highlighting
Nice.
that I have in the example.
I think highlighting is my favorite thing. I know I probably said that on Monday.
Right, but it just comes alive, right?
Yeah, it just does.
Satisfying. You save it for the end, and
Talk about making it pop. Yeah.
Cherry on the sundae. Then you have to wait till the end because you don't know
Yeah,
how much
you
keep.
do.
Where it's
You
gonna
really
go.
do. Definitely got to wait till the end.
All right, so that's my moon, and I love it.
Nice.
I'm gonna go ahead because I want my sun nice and dry, and it's almost there, but not quite. And I'm gonna go ahead and highlight just like I did before the edges of my clouds. So I'm gonna wet my big brush, dry it out, but I want it nice and kind of consistently moist. I'm gonna go right back into my straight up white and hit just with some strokes this edge.
Okay.
Just like this, kind of blur it with the brush.
That's basically highlighting.
Yeah, definitely highlighting. My last pass at my clouds. I say that, watch, I'll go back in. And then I'm gonna dry out my brush and just kind of move this around. I still want all the transparency, translucency of the beautiful sky we spent so much time on. And then last but certainly not least, I am probably with my medium brush. We haven't used that yet, but I am going to go ahead and reach for that at the moment. You don't have to, but that's what I've got. I'm going to take the rest of my white. I'm going to put it in what's left of my buttery yellow that we mixed. And working from the inside out, that's going to be the second coat on my sun. And the reason I'm working from the inside out, Hershey, what was that?
Tell me real quick what the color you just put a little more yellow to some white.
I added the yellow, the buttery yellow that we were using for the sun. I added the rest of the white that was on my palette. If you don't have
so just a
palette,
got you.
Give yourself some more. So I give you big whites. And I'm going to work from the outside in because I want it to be whitest, or from the inside out rather, because I want it to be whitest in the middle. And I want to send this out to, I'll probably switch back to my small brush, but I didn't want it to be too small in the middle because I want a little bit bigger strokes. And I want this to extend to my sunbeams. You can take a minute, sharpen your brush, so to speak, roll it around, get a nice point.
Yes.
Maybe we'll get t-shirts made that say sharpen your brush. Time for art. Sharpen your brush. And I'm working from the inside. I want the middle of every one of these strokes or beams to be the lightest. So just taking my time. It's my bonus beam that I added.
The yellow's popping a lot more than on the original that you have on the left-hand side.
Yeah.
I like the yellow a lot.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's because actually I was more patient about letting this one dry than I was that one.
Yeah.
Which brings me to, we all need to be reminded to practice what you preach. As I was doing that, I was like, you know what the problem is.
You know what the problem is.
You know what the problem is. You mixed, you didn't layer. And so just like that. This way. And then I'm just going to take the rest of what I have on my palette, on my brush, and I'm going to put that in the middle and just kind of get that as thick and dense as possible. So I want the middle of my sun to be as opaque as possible. And there we go.
There, the cloud part's a lot of fun for anybody at home who's going along. Yeah, I'm able to watch Allison and do the clouds on mine. It's really great.
All right, so I think I'm about done with this.
Excellent.
I'm gonna go ahead and sign this one. We haven't done that necessarily with our others.
You know, you wait to sign them. What's your rule about signing?
Well, a lot of my paintings, Hershey's worked in art fair with me. I don't sign because that means I'm done, and that's just way that I'm afraid of commitment. We've been through that, and that's but who are we kidding? But in this instance, I'm really pleased with this. I like this one more than I like that one. So I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna do it with my neutral. I like to sign with neutrals if they'll show up that way, because then it's not too. If it's your middle tone, it's not too overwhelming. And
there you go.
Make sure I have enough of it. There we go. I have a very simple signature that.
Yes. All right. So that's the painting there. It's done.
Done. That's what we look at. So the contrast, because I was more patient, works even better here than it did here. This can go a lot of different ways. Embrace whatever direction this takes you. And I think we're going to get into planets and the sun's and the planet's orbit of the sun in our next few December months.
Nice. Well, you know what? Before we say goodnight, I hope everybody enjoyed their painting tonight. Please don't forget to follow us, like us, and upload your paintings to Time for Art subscriptions on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And then again, everything that you see here is included, the materials and the materials to do this painting, as well as materials to paint for an entire month, come in each kit. So everything from the transfer paper to everything you see that we use today.
Vellum templates, all of it. And you can subscribe at timeforartsubscriptions.com.
All right. We'll see you guys on Monday. Thanks, Allison.
All right. Bye, guys.
All right. Bye, guys.